Quilty friend, it's Carolina Moore, your favorite sewing and quilting YouTuber, and today we're talking about a quilty business topic that affects all of us, people who buy and people who sell alike, and that is chargebacks. Now, every now and then here on the YouTube channel, I share different businessy quilting topics that I think that customers might be interested in, because most customers, y'all aren't running small businesses, and that's great. We as small business owners, we love our customers, and we don't expect y'all to know or understand everything that goes on behind the scenes of quilty businesses, but sometimes there's pieces of information that can be helpful, and I like to share that here. When I share these videos, I often get messages from other quilty business owners saying thanks so much for sharing this and for educating the quilty community. And I also get messages from quilters just like you saying, I had no idea that that's how this worked. Thanks so much for helping me out. So hopefully this is one of those videos for you. Now, if you're not familiar with what a chargeback is when we look at our credit card statement and we say, that purchase doesn't look like something that I made. That name does not sound familiar. I don't know where I was on that date, or that I definitely was not in that area on that date. So I'm going to call my credit card company and say, hey, I'm looking at my bill and there is this amount and from this merchant, and yeah, I didn't make this purchase. Now, merchant is just a general name for the business. Could be a big business, could be a small business, but a merchant is the company that's processing the credit card and getting the money, right? And the consumer or customer is the one who hopefully had put in their credit card and allowed the money to be taken in exchange for getting the product, right? And hopefully getting the product. So the customer is calling up the credit card company and saying, never use this merchant. The credit card company says, okay, we're going to go ahead and issue a chargeback, and we'll see if we can get this resolved for you. Now, you may be familiar with that process. You may have gone through that process before, which is a huge bummer if you've ever dealt with any fraud on your credit cards, and I'm so sorry that happened to you. So what happens on the merchant end for someone like me is that the credit card company files a chargeback. And when they file that, they pull the entire amount of the purchase. So that would be the entire amount spent, including any shipping costs, plus an additional fee of anywhere from $15 to $25, depending on the card company. PayPal, credit card companies, they all do it a little bit different, but a fee somewhere between $15 and $25. So let's say it was a $100 purchase with $10 of shipping, and let's say it was the minimum of $15 fee. That's $125 that immediately comes out of the bank account of the merchant and sits with the credit card company while this whole thing is arbitrated. It makes sense, because if it truly is fraud, the credit card company wants to get that money back as soon as possible, because if there's fraud going on, that merchant, if it's a fraudulent merchant, is going to shut down their operations. They're going to zero out their bank accounts. There's going to be no way for 30, 60, 90 days from now, the credit card company to claw back that money. So they immediately pull it back and hold it themselves to make sure that they're covered and that their customer is covered. So it makes sense they do that. However, as the merchant, if it's a legitimate purchase that the person may have forgotten about, and we'll talk about that in a second, you now have $125 that's come out of your account. It's a bill you didn't expect, and that money is gone until the process resolves itself. The merchant is generally given the opportunity to provide any kind of documentation. We as merchants are also encouraged to reach out to the customer. So often I'll send an email, or I'll even sometimes do a quick phone call and say, hey, I got this from the credit card processor. They said that you filed this chargeback and said that it was fraud, but I looked at your purchase and it looks like it was these items and it was shipped on this date and it was received on this date at this address. Maybe perhaps you forgot that you made this purchase, and very often they'll respond back and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes, I did make that purchase. And then one of two things happens. Either the customer, the consumer, will reach back out to their credit card company and say, silly me, I totally forgot. I didn't recognize the name that was on there. It really is a purchase that I made. So please go ahead and reverse the chargeback. And sometimes the credit card company will reverse that immediately and the merchant will get the money right back within like 24 to 48 hours. But sometimes the credit card company will still wait for the full 30 or 60, sometimes even 90-day process to resolve out. Now, if the customer doesn't immediately do that, the merchant has a certain window of time to prove that everything was legit, to prove that the order was legitimate, to prove that they shipped it out, to prove that it was received. Those photos that the shipping companies have showing that it was actually delivered on the doorstep, deliver all those things, any communication with the customer, explaining anything that was going on. The merchant has to put all that together and submit it in a file to the credit card company, and then the credit card company has a window of time where they go through it and decide who's right, the merchant or the customer, and then issue the money back to whoever it's supposed to go to. So if it truly is fraud, it goes back to the customer, and if there was a mistake, then it goes back to the merchant. But in the meantime, the merchant is out this amount of money. And I'm bringing this up right now because we're about to go into the holiday season, and lots of folks are going to be making purchases from places that they don't normally make purchases from, as we're putting together Christmas gifts and we need items to make those gifts, or as we're purchasing items from stores that we don't necessarily shop at, for friends, for family, for their hobbies that aren't necessarily our hobbies, and we might forget that these are those items. Now, I've had this happen to me a number of times where I get a chargeback notification, I reach out to the customer, and they say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." And there are a couple notable ones. One was a customer who I reached out to them and said, "Was this an error?" And she immediately responded, "I am so sorry. I did make that purchase. I will reach out to my credit card company. I will have it reversed." But the issue with her was that her credit card company, when they send that statement out, they sort things into line items. They say, these are groceries, these are utilities, these are, hobby expenses. They put things into categories somewhat automatically, and they put the purchase through me under utilities. So when she was looking at her credit card statement, she saw under utilities Carolina Moore, and she thought, there's no way I'm paying some girl's utilities. I'm paying my utilities. I'm not paying somebody else's utilities. And so she reported it as fraud. So that was a mix-up with the credit card statement, forgetting that she purchased something through me and that the credit card company had mislabeled that on the credit card statement. I had another customer who a couple months later disputed something. So she'd forgotten that it was a purchase that she made from me. She was the first time and only time that she'd purchased from me. So it's not that she was very familiar with my shop or seeing it on her credit card bill. So she disputed with her credit card company. I reached out and let her know. And her response was to send me her entire credit card number plus expiration date plus the CVV code, and said, "Please charge me again with interest." If I wasn't committing fraud with her card, she's now given me all the information so that I could commit fraud with her card, which is not great. So never, ever, ever, never, ever send your full card number plus the expiration date plus the CVV over email. There's no reason to ever do that. It has to go through that process. And the reason is because if I, as a merchant, have a lot of these chargebacks go through, then it's like a credit report, right? If you have lots of dings on your credit, people don't want to lend to you anymore because you're obviously high risk. If I, as a merchant, have lots of chargebacks that go through on my account, then clearly I'm a risky merchant, and no credit card processing company wants to process my transactions because that's high risk for them. So I asked some of my quilty business owner friends to share some of their stories with me of experiences that they've had, and I'm going to share a couple here anonymously, of course. This was from a friend of mine. She said, "A few years ago, I woke up on New Year's Day to see that a customer had filed a case against me with her credit card company. I was upset, so I wrote her a very polite email asking why she had done that. It turned out that she had used her husband's credit card. He was the one that saw it on the statement, didn't recognize it, and filed a case against me. She apologized to me, but I don't think she took any action to clear things up. I had to deal with months of admin, all for a $10 chargeback. So it was a $10 item plus that $15 to $25 fee, and so $25 to $35, and she had to do a bunch of admin work, submit files just to keep that chargeback off of her report, because the husband and wife, there was a miscommunication at home, which it happens. It happens. But also, it's for small businesses juggling so many things that, 90 minutes of having to fill out those forms and the stress of having that money pulled out of your account can be huge. Another friend said, I had a lady who ordered a bunch of fabric. One of the items was short, so I emailed her. She responded back that she would take that, and I adjusted her invoice accordingly. I shipped her the fabric, and she emailed me thanking me so much for the gorgeous fabric and great customer service. By the way, we love these emails when people respond back and say, thank you so much. I love everything I got. Oh, those emails make our day. But then, 2 weeks later, there was a PayPal dispute that she didn't authorize the purchase. I sent the emails to PayPal and everything, but they sided in her favor. Very bizarre situation. So clearly the customer appreciated it, but there was some kind of mix-up where the customer forgot who she'd ordered from, filed a chargeback, and whoever at PayPal did not go through the documents appropriately and ended up siding with the customer. So the shop who did everything right ended up being out the fabric, out all the cost of the fabric, out the shipping, and then also out that additional $15 to $25 fee that they get charged. I've also heard that there are some credit card processors that when they refund the merchant, if it's decided in the merchant's favor, they don't refund that $15 to $25 fee. They actually keep that as part of their processing costs, and the merchant actually loses that. So that's also potential as well. Filing a fake chargeback or a mistaken chargeback can actually end up costing the business, even when everything turns out in the business's favor in the end. Another friend says, I love it when the customer says, I emailed you 3 times with no response, and it turns out they misspelled my name. And I've had this happen as well. I had a customer file a chargeback. I reached out to her and said, hey, you filed this as fraud, but it's arriving tomorrow. I'm not sure where the fraud comes in. And she said she actually filed it as not having received it, and that she tried reaching out to me through this app and that I didn't respond. And I said, well, but I don't have that app, so I'm not sure how you reached out to me. And she responded to me that she went to look for the messages that she knew she sent to contact me, and the messages had disappeared. So maybe she contacted another company mistakenly. I believe that she tried. I'm going to share one more story, and that's another friend who says, I had a chargeback through my Shopify for the purchase 3 digital patterns, about $35. I disputed it and showed proof she was one of my Instagram followers and even commented on my Instagram DMs. So I won the chargeback. I wonder if her spouse maybe disputed them. She still follows me. And can you imagine how much work it is for a merchant to go through all of their Instagram followers and try to find this person? It's such extra admin work, and that admin work is time that we pattern designers aren't designing new patterns, aren't making new samples, aren't coming up with new ideas. It's this admin work that we never knew we were getting into when we started a small business. So I want to share with you ways that we can minimize these chargebacks. And the first is when you see something on your credit card statement and think, that doesn't sound right. The first thing I do is I go into my email and I search the names or keywords that are in that line item on the credit card bill. So it says like Michelle's Jewelry. I will type in Michelle's Jewelry into email and see what pops up. And often that receipt will pop up and I'll go, oh, okay, yes, I remember that's what I bought. Because maybe I didn't buy jewelry. Maybe I bought an embroidered patch, but Michelle's Jewelry sells this embroidered patch. Another thing that I do is I look at the date. Now, the date that it actually hits the credit card can be as much as sometimes a week off from the date of the purchase. So I look at the date. So if it was the 1st of July, I go back and look at where I was on the 1st of July and the days prior to that. You don't need to go forward because it's never going to hit your credit card statement before you actually make the purchase. So I go back about a week and I think about where I was, and often it'll be I was at a craft fair, or I was at a quilt show, or I was someplace where there are lots of little vendors and I bought through a small vendor that isn't someone that I normally buy from, and perhaps even the name on that vendor shop doesn't quite match exactly the name that they have on the credit card statement. So I think about where I was. Now, if it's not coming up in my email and I can't find an email receipt and I can't think of where I might have been that I might have made that purchase, then I'll just go into Google and do a full search of that name, because sometimes that will bring it fresh to my mind. Every single time using these 3 steps, have been able to figure out that yes, it actually was me that made that purchase and I forgot about it and I haven't had to file a chargeback. Now, there are definitely legitimate times where chargebacks would need to be filed. If you truly have had fraud on your credit card, if the company was one of those fraud companies that we've talked about on this channel before and they never sent you anything, or if what they sent you didn't look like the picture at all, you've tried reaching out to them to make it right and they are not responding, there are legitimate times when you might need to work with your credit card company to file a chargeback. But before jumping immediately to someone's used my credit card number, make sure that it wasn't a small business that you purchased from, that you've just forgotten about for the moment, and that you're not putting more work on this small business's plate. Hopefully it gives you some new information about chargebacks. I think a lot of customers believe that chargebacks are just covered by the credit card company as part of our credit card fees that we pay, but it really isn't. If the merchant is still in business, the credit card company absolutely comes to the merchant and pulls that money right out of our account to cover it, which in the case of true merchants not fulfilling orders or merchants selling fraudulent items is absolutely legit and is how it should happen. But in cases of like a mistaken identity or forgetfulness, can really wreak a lot of havoc on a small business. Friends, I hope you'll share this video with friends, especially as we head into this holiday season and we're making lots of purchases from merchants that we don't normally purchase from, to make sure that any chargebacks that we're filing are truly legit and that we're not burdening small businesses as they're trying to get all of our orders out this Christmas. Friends, thanks so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up. Leave comments down below with any questions about chargebacks or share some of your experiences. I'd love to hear your experiences as well. And maybe you can go down and read the experiences of others down in the comment section. And make sure you subscribe to this channel. I usually share actual quilty type videos and not business videos, but I thought that this issue was important enough that I would share it with y'all today. Thanks so much for watching, my friends. I will see you right here real soon. Bye for now.